How's it going, my festive bakers? Welcome to episode number 2 of the Christmas series. Today we're making a braided sweet loaf, flavoured with cardamom and covered in pearl sugar. So let's go to the kitchen and get started. This bread is inspired by the Finnish pulla, a soft and sweet Christmas bread flavoured with cardamom. It has all the characteristics of a great seasonal baking project, and it's super easy as ever. When someone tells me that they would like to make a bread similar to brioche but with less fat, this is what I would recommend. It is light and airy, yet rich. This effect is achieved by using the scalding method. You could use this dough for various projects, some sweet buns or cinnamon rolls perhaps. You can also make a freestanding loaf if you like. Whatever you decide to make, it will be soft and puffy, and it will stay softer for longer, thanks to the scalding method. So let me show you how it's done before you can make yours. Starting with the ingredients, we'll need some white bread flour, water, yeast, salt, sugar, butter, some dried cranberries or raisins or any other type of dried fruit that you like. We'll need an egg, and we'll need some cardamom for flavoring. You can also use pre-ground cardamom. We'll need another egg for glazing and something to top the loaf with. I'm going to use some pearl sugar, but you can use regular sugar or some sesame seeds or just leave it plain. It's up to you. When it comes to the equipment, we don't need much. This is a very basic recipe. So just a bowl, scales, a dough scraper, temperature probe, a brush and a baking tin. I'm going to use my USA Pan Pullman loaf tin. It measures at around 9 inches or 23 centimeters long, around 4 inches or 10 centimeters wide, and also 4 inches or 10 centimeters deep. If you don't have Pullman loaf tin, don't worry. This loaf will fit very well in a regular 2-pound loaf tin, just like this one. Okay, let's start by preparing the cardamom. As I mentioned earlier, you can use pre-ground cardamom, but the freshly ground stuff will be extra flavorful. And this is how I like to deal with it. First, I put the pods in the mortar and I bash them up with a pestle. Once all the shells have cracked, I pick them out and then grind the leftover seeds to a fine powder. And don't discard the shells, you can use them for flavoring things like mulled wine or custard. After grinding up the cardamom, I like to remove it from the bowl using a brush. It is by far the best tool for this job. Okay, with the cardamom done, let's move on to scalding. We'll combine part of the flour, the cranberries, and boiling water. I decided to add the cranberries here to soak them. If you're going to use pre-ground cardamom, you could also add it at this step. That will help with bringing out more flavor out of it. Mix the scald until there's no dry flour left, then cover it and leave it to cool down. My kitchen is around 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's about the temperature I want my scald to be. Because once we finish mixing, the dough would have warmed up by a couple degrees. And if all this seems new and strange to you, and you don't know what scalding is, you can find a full video about it in Principles of Baking playlist on my channel. And if you're not sure about no-knead bread dough temperature control, you'll find a video about that in the Principles of Baking playlist too. Okay, let's move on to mixing the final dough. Add the butter, the yeast, the salt, the cardamom, the sugar and the egg to the scald and then mix until it's nice and smooth. I'm using melted butter just because it's easier to mix into the dough. And I'm going to use my whisk because it's one of the best tools when you're making no-knead bread. But you can also mix this with a spatula. Once everything's nicely mixed, add the final ingredient, the flour. Then grab your dough scraper and mix it to a dough. It will be slightly loose and sticky, but that's totally normal. While I'm mixing this dough, let me remind you that there is a whole Christmas bread playlist on my channel. It has almost 30 recipes in it already. You'll find Christmas bread recipes from all over the world there, with some extremely unique bakes, which I bet you haven't seen before. So check it out. Okay, shape your dough into a nice round ball and then take its temperature. If your dough turned out warmer, it'll ferment more rapidly. If it's cooler, it will take longer. Adjust the fermentation times accordingly. At this temperature, the bulk fermentation should take around 2 hours. Halfway through bulk fermentation will give the dough a fold. In a recipe like this, folding replaces kneading. Take the dough out of the bowl, place it on the table with the smooth side down, then fold the edge over the middle, going around in a circle until reach point where you started. Then flip it smooth side up again and tighten it against the table. If it feels a bit too sticky, you can dust it lightly with flour. Okay, once you have a nice tight dough ball, place it back into the bowl and leave it to ferment for another hour. After a total of 2 hours of bulk fermentation, it should be nice and puffy. If yours isn't, just leave it to ferment for longer. Mine one looks good to go, so I'm going to weigh it and divide it into 3 equal pieces because we're making a 3-strand braid. After dividing, we need to pre-shape these dough pieces. We'll give them kind of a blunt cylinder shape. Flatten the dough, cross the 2 sides over in the middle, and then roll it up. The pre-shaping step is there to ensure that everything's nice and uniform. After pre-shaping, we'll cover up the dough and leave it to rest for around 20 minutes. During this time, the gluten will relax and will make our final shaping job easier. You can find out more about folding, pre-shaping, dividing, final shaping in the steps of baking playlist. Before we move on to final shaping, let's prepare our baking tin by brushing with some soft butter. This will not only ensure that the loaf doesn't stick, but it will also give the sides a nice toasted finish. And now it's final shaping time. Give the dough and the table a light dusting of flour. It will be slightly sticky. And then gradually roll each piece out to about 1 foot or 30 centimeters long. Apply equal pressure, roll it back and forth, and taper the ends. If you feel a hollow bubble inside the dough, slap it to burst it. Otherwise the loaf may end up with a hole in the middle. Okay, once all your strands are done, squish them all together at one end, and then braid your 3-strand loaf. And you already know how it goes. Over, under, and once you reach the bottom, press the ends together and tuck them underneath. Usually I would brush a loaf like this with egg and sprinkle it with pearl sugar just before baking. But because this is going in a tin, and I want maximum coverage when it comes to the glaze and the sugar, I decided to glaze it and sprinkle it before it goes in the tin. I'm using a tray here to not make a sticky mess on the table. Brush it generously with egg on all sides, and then sprinkle it with the topping of your choice. You can tilt the tray to sprinkle the sides too. Okay, once you're done, clean down the mess, and now carefully load the loaf in the greased baking tin. If you want to make this as a freestanding loaf and bake it on a tray, I would suggest lowering the hydration so it doesn't spread out too much sideways. This dough is relatively loose. If you bake it on a tray just like this, it'll be pretty flat. I would go with 160 grams of water in the scald instead of 200. Final proofing will take around an hour to an hour and a half at around 23 degrees Celsius or 73 degrees Fahrenheit. During the final hour of fermentation, preheat the oven 160 degrees Celsius, 320 Fahrenheit, fan on, or 180 Celsius, 355 fan off. Once the loaf has almost doubled in size, it is ready for the oven. And this one definitely looks ready, so let's get this bad boy in the oven. The initial bake will take 40 minutes, but it won't be done yet. This loaf is soft and delicate. To ensure that the crust sets and the loaf keeps its shape, we'll pull the tin out of the oven after 40 minutes of baking, we'll remove the loaf from the tin, and we'll place the loaf back into the oven for another 10 minutes. Handle it gently. Use the palms of your hands, not your fingertips. It is quite easy to dent this loaf. Okay, let's give this another 10 minutes and we'll be done. And there you have it. That's how I make a nice, simple, braided, cardamom flavored Christmas bread. As far as I'm concerned, you could put cardamom in anything and call it a Christmas bread, and this is certainly a good use for it. A soft, fragrant and comforting bread is great for this cold time of year, and you can't have too many simple recipes that produce such great results. Don't forget that you can share pictures of your Christmas bakes or any other bakes on our Flickr group. You'll find it linked below the video. So what do you think of this recipe? What's your favorite Christmas bake? Let me know down in the comments. You want to see more videos like this one? Click over here. Subscribe to the channel, click right here. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.